encoded
Right.
like that.
Right. So let's go ahead and define epigenetics now. So epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment can cause changes in the effect and affect the way your genes work. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's you're not just harboring, like I said earlier, physical trauma. So you're not just harboring the trauma like in your emotions or spiritually and things, but you're harboring this trauma physically, and it's literally affecting the way your genes express themselves. It's literally affecting the way your body exists, the way your body works. And she's going to
Right.
explain this more and more. So,
Right. Right. And to put a picture to it real quick, and then I'll be quiet.
mhm,
To put a picture to it, you can think of your genes as uh, a light bulb with a knob. And so there's an on and off switch that'll turn the gene expression on and off. But there's also a knob that controls how bright the light switch gets, how much light is expressed through that bulb. So you can think of your epigenetics as that knob, that turning of the dial to show how your genes are expressed and how strong that expression is.
right. Gotcha. That's a good one. That's a good one. Shine on.
And what I did was I started to look at the African American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. So I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African American experience. I started to see common behaviors that I took for granted as, well, cultural. There's adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors. Well, what are they? Let's just say 2019, you have a black mother and a white mother. The sons go to school together. They find themselves at a meeting. The black mother leans over to the white mother and says, I just wanted to mention to you that I noticed that your son is really doing quite well. And the white mother's response is, oh, thank you. She begins to go on and on about he won the science fair, his uncle's an astronaut. She's just oozing. She realizes the black mother's son is actually excelling her son. And she says, well, wait a minute. Your son's the one that's really coming along. And the black mother responds, oh my God, he's a handful, but oh, he just works my nerves. Now, when I'm working with African American people, it doesn't matter what the audience is. It doesn't matter what class. If I were to ask, is she very proud while she's saying those denigrating things? And everybody laughs and goes, of course, there's a secret. Because everybody black knows that even though the black mother is going, oh my God, she's really proud. So now let's roll that scene back 300 years. And let's say this black mother is working in the fields, and a white slave owner comes through and says, wow, that boy is really coming along. What is she gonna say? No, he's not. He's stupid. He's shiftless. He can't work, because I don't want you to sell him. So I denigrate them to protect them. That is called appropriate adaptation when living in a hostile environment.
Well, damn. So adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very, very, very interesting and a great point. And I like the way she laid it out with the analogy, because that is something that we still see played out to this day. That's why she has that analogy. I've seen it plenty of times, especially around white men or white women who are perceived as having some sort of authority or power, and the child may say something that is correcting the white person or the child's behavior or anything that's happening with the child, and the mother would go above and beyond to make sure that she punished this child in front of these white people. But like she's saying, it's going back to slavery. It's going back to that survival mentality that a lot of mothers had to adopt. So there you go, to adaptation and survival. So if I punish my son to the highest degree, then you don't have to punish my son, i.e., you don't have to kill my son, or you don't have to sell my son away. So to protect my son, to keep my son with me, to keep my son as safe as possible as I can, I will beat my son, even the daughter. I will beat my child down. I will I will go to town on them. A lot of people associate the way a lot of black people were whooped, especially when we were coming up. A lot of black people were whooped with slavery. There's connections to that, but like she's saying, it's breaking down the idea of survival. We have to make it, and we have to make it together. So in order for us to make it together, I have to break his soul. I have to break his spirit down a bit. I have to humble him. I have to make him docile. I have to make him adapt a behavior that is suitable so we can stay together. We can stay as safe as possible, even though adapting this behavior realistically is not necessarily keeping us safe. It's not really keeping us safe at all, but it's keeping us as safe as we can be.
Yeah,
That's
it's
how I
the
feel.
no, yeah, it's um because this is one of the things we talked about in the last show with Nearly Fuller Jr. I
Mhm.
think it kind of goes into that where
That's why I chose this clip.
yeah, because the idea of black people holding each other back, black people doing all like we in
It's a why.
right, and there's a spin on the analogy, right? Like because we talk about the crabs in the barrel mentality all the
Right.
time.
Right. Let's
And
get it.
there
Let's
are a
get
few
into it.
people that talk about, well, the barrel isn't the natural habitat of the crab.
Hmm.
True enough, that is true. But another way of looking at that scenario would be, um, when you're pulling the crabs out of the barrel, aren't you getting ready to cook them and eat them? So couldn't it be argued that the crabs holding the other crab back is trying to save that crab's life?
Survival.
Right.
Adapting to your environment, trying to survive in your environment.
So there are a bunch of different ways to look at all these scenarios, but you have to look at them all in context and in totality before you begin. And I've been saying for God knows how long, I believe the superpower of black people is our adaptability.
Hmm.
um our ability to survive circumstances and situations which other people could not, and we know that they could not because we
Because
know
they
of the
didn't.
multitude of people that didn't.
Yeah, they didn't.
um
We did. We almost didn't, but we did.
but we did,
Right.
and in a lot of the journals of early Europeans who were involved in the a lot of the decisions that were made to subjugate black people, there was that adaptability trait was something that was
Hmm.
recognized early on
Right. So we need to go
as a
get some more.
right of something that was beneficial, our propensity to accept our lot in life and
Right.
move in accordance with whatever that lot is as has been dictated. So I think that there's a lot of power in that, and also then once you begin to acknowledge that, you begin to accept and understand just how difficult it's going to be, because situations and circumstances, while they might not be in a place where we're facing the same kind of damage, the same level of danger, I'm sorry, recourse hasn't been made.
Right.
There's
At all.
been nothing done to right the ship. So the human body homeostasis rules not just the internal balance, but also personality and expression and culture. Things are going to stay the way they are until something forces them to change.
Right. 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 Let's go.
The little white boy, say Timmy, he feels really comfortable and happy about what his mom just said about him. And Trey looks at his mom and wonders, why can't you be proud of me? Because he doesn't understand the secret yet. And by the time he learns the secret, he will have already been injured by it.
And see, that right there is another powerful point. That right there is another powerful point, because a lot of times when we realize what have happened to us, and we may be in a position to even counteract what happened to us, it still has a significant effect on how we behave and how we behave with each other. And so it's going to take a lot more work to reverse what happened, to reverse the effects. Yeah, I know now, but I had to find out. And like she's saying, the secret, because it's like it's unspoken thing that all black people understand about survival. Now, it is something that is talked about, but it is an unspoken thing when we really understand. Well, the mother, like she's saying, the mother is proud of her son, but the way she's showing that she's proud of her son is to talk about all of his faults in front of this white woman, with the idea of, if I talk about my son this way, if I describe my son in this way, that'll keep him safe, because I really don't know what this white woman or what anybody else might try to do to my son if they feel like he think he's uppity or superior. That's what I'm hearing with that.
I would even go, because there are a bunch of different ways you can go with this one too. I would even go the direction of saying it's a secret because not a lot of people even really understand why they do it. They just do it. It's a cultural thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, the little
Gene
boy,
expressions.
right? The little boy never finds out why his mom addresses him like that in front of other people, and so he's damaged by it. But he buries that, doesn't deal with it, and then ends up doing it to his kids.
Right.
Um, and so that damage becomes a part of the cultural expression, and it becomes normalized
Yeah.
damage. And then when people do find out, they either don't have the necessary communications with their kids to explain
Mm-hmm.
it and to work
Mm-hmm.
on changing it, um, or they go too far to the other way and they just start doing too much,
Right.
you
And
know,
spoiling them.
right, spoiling them, overinflating them, putting them in a situation where the real world is going to humble your child because you've raised them to think that they are the greatest thing since the invention of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And they not, they just another black person here in America.
Right.
So um I I agree with what you're saying. I just think that like there are like that one section, you could make a whole
It's a lot.
show out of
Yeah,
that.
it's no, it's a whole lot, but you know, we just trying, we're making sense of this as best we can, um in a productive manner. So that's, so you know, it's coming out like that. But also it makes me go back and think about one of the examples that was used in last week's show with Neely Fuller. I was talking about the barber and how the barber has to make a conscious effort to not treat his son the way his father treated him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to be overly aggressive and snap on my son and just yell at my son and just
Mm-hmm.
make everything feel like it's punishment with my son, because that's the only way I really know how to exist in the father-son dynamic, because
Mm-hmm.
that's all I was taught. So I have to make a conscious effort that even if my son does something to piss me off, I have to think. I have to be calm and have to think about how I'm going to respond to my son, so I won't continue to pass this trauma down.
And here's another thing I'm going to add on when it comes to the biological component, the epigenetic piece. Um, Epigenetics. So when the egg and the sperm come together, most, not all, but most of the epigenetic markers on the sperm cell are erased. Um, most of the epigenetics on the egg cell are not present as well, but more of them remain than on the sperm cell. But so the kicker here though is those epigenetic markers start forming in the fetus, in the baby, while it's inside the womb. The experiences of the mother while the baby is
Yes.
being
Yeah.
developed are
Yeah.
shaping that baby's genetic
Right.
expression. So
Right.
that's something else to keep in mind here when we're talking about the survival adaptation and how we maneuver about the world. It's not just the direct interactions you have with your child, it's the thoughts and the energies and the environment that you're growing up,
Oh,
that you're
yeah.
producing that child
Yeah.
in. And in addition to that, one final thing, it's been shown that these epigenetic markers have an impact on your children down to the third and fourth generation. You're talking about your grandkids, your great grandkids, your great great grandkids are going to be influenced by the food you eat, the experiences you've had, and the decisions that you were making when you were 8, 9, 10 years old. So from that perspective, it becomes even more important to analyze a lot of the cultural the cultural things that we have in place, the cultural practices that we
Yeah.
have in place, and think about, are we doing what's best, not just for us and our kids, but for our grandkids and our great grandkids.
But also when we talk about environment, because the cultural piece will express itself out into the environment. And like you said, the environment matters. The environment will play a part in the shaping of the behavior and behavior genetically, and just the actual behavior of the person expressing themselves within this world. So if that baby is like in the womb and in an environment that is hostile, that's a stressful environment, that has the mother stressed out, that has the father stressed out constantly, then the baby is born into this ultra stressful environment, experiencing trauma continuously. Because that's a lot of people who, by the time they were 10 years old, the trauma that they experience is overwhelming. And you wonder why the behavior isn't quote unquote normal behavior, or the behavior isn't you know, the behavior that people would want to see in public. But you got to look at the experience within the environment of the individual. Let's continue.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. PTSD is a disorder that occurs as a result of a single trauma. You don't even have to be there to actually get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. You could just hear about something horrific happening to someone you love. So you have people who have experienced it firsthand, people who have witnessed it in their environment, right? People who are continuing to be oppressed. That exacerbates any possibility of healing. So it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, because then it becomes part of what we call your socialization process. So you begin to normalize a way of living and being, everything from what we eat to what we believe it means to be a friend. You know, all of these things are colored by history. And if you don't understand it, you're going to fold in things that you've just assumed are normal. But post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, exaggerated startle response, outbursts of anger, feeling of foreshortened future. There was a point where there were African-American children in different urban settings that didn't expect to live to be adults because they saw so much death, that they started planning their funerals like at 13, 12, as young as 10. When you start looking at the simple biology, you start looking at the impact of stress on health. And while we look at general stress, we know finances, you have illnesses, all these different things. How about being black? How does factoring in being black in America impact your stress level and therefore your body's ability to operate its own immune system? Because we know it.
Hey, so I just want to say real quick, she fine. She's amazing, man. Dr. Joy. I love the way she break it down, but do your thing. Go ahead.